wait for people to come in. Here they come. They've had dinner. They've sorted out the kids. Walked the dog.
Can't even see you now.
Okay. All right, Deb, you're away.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome. My name's Deb Ranson. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a clinical nurse consultant. I currently work in the cannabinoid medicine space. I'm going to be your host this evening. And tonight is brought to you by No More Zombie Veterans. They're normally hosted by Derek Pyra, but I will be your fill-in host tonight. So just bear with me. I don't normally do this. So just for housekeeping, pop your questions in the chat section, and we'll do our best to answer those for you in the time allowed. Also, you can pop them in the Q&A chat as well. Obviously, we'll do our best to get to them. This evening, it's episode 2 in the series. It's called Insights into Cannabinoids and Terpenes. It's basically an overview of the endocannabinoid therapies and really delving into those cannabinoids and the terpenes themselves to understand their roles and those applications a little bit more thoroughly and deeper. Bringing that to you, we have the delightful Robert Collier. He's had quite a remarkable 20-year career in this industry. He actually did the first episode and will continue. His knowledge, he's spanned the globe. He's an esteemed keynote speaker as well. I'm sure he'll keep you very well engaged tonight. He's an expert consultant as well in cannabinoid, endocannabinoid therapies, those genetics, the cultivation, and that regulatory proficiency around that. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Robert. I've just got a couple of things to let you know. The disclaimer for this evening. Obviously, the information discussed this evening in this webinar, it's not medical advice, it's information only. We're not giving it to you to run off and take this anywhere. We just want you to please consult with your GP or obviously visit the TGA website around those guidelines. You can see where you can find that for your information. So without any more words from me, I'll hand you over to Robert to proceed with the evening. Thanks for listening.
Good evening, everyone. I hope we are good this evening. Today we embark on a journey of discovery into the intricate pathways of trauma healing and resilience. So let's unravel the multifaceted effects of cannabinoids and terpenes while exploring their impact on PTSD symptoms, including anxiety, sleep disturbances, and fear. We will start out with what is a cannabinoid. Cannabinoids are a class of chemical compounds that interact with the endocannabinoid system in the body, the ECS for short. The ECS is a complex cell signaling system that plays a role in regulating various psychological processes, including mood, appetite, sleep, and immune function. Beyond THC and CBD, there are over 100 other cannabinoids, each with its own potential effects and interactions with the endocannabinoid system. The two most studied and well-known are delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol and CBD cannabidiol. THC is the psychoactive compound responsible for the high associated with cannabinoid varieties. CBD does not produce the same psychoactive effects and may have various therapeutic properties alone by itself, which we are going to discuss into further. Cannabinoids exert their effects by interacting with specific cannabinoid receptors present on the surface of cells. These receptors are found in different parts of the central nervous system, and the two main types of cannabinoid receptors in the body are CB1 and CB2. In 1992, a natural occurring substance in the brain that binds to CB1 was discovered, called anandamide. This cannabinoid-like chemical and others were later discovered and referred to as endocannabinoids. The effects of cannabinoids are exuberated on the brain they're really dependent on the area of the brain that we are looking to effective on. Different cannabinoids affect different parts of the brain. Effects on the limbic system, where there may be memory, cognition, and psychomotor performance, and effects on the mesolimbic pathway may affect the reward and pleasure responses. Pain perception may also be altered here. In this labyrinth of trauma and healing, individuals grappling with PTSD navigate a complex terrain fraught with emotional upheaval and psychological distress. While significant progress has been made in understanding and addressing this debilitating condition, many continue to face formidable challenges on their path to recovery. Against this backdrop, the following 5 discovered cannabinoids emerge as possible allies, offering multifaceted approaches to symptom management and restoration of well-being. My area of understanding as to how cannabinoids and terpenes affected the brain goes all the way back to the mid-2000s, when we started with a course of different trials. The idea of it was we would have an individual turn up for an MRI scan. They would then go away and consume a cannabinoid variety. And then they would come back then 30 minutes to an hour later and have another MRI scan. And we would start to look to see what parts of the brain were actually being activated by the different cannabinoid varieties, as well as the different terpene profiles that existed as well. So from there, we're all familiar with THC, so we're not going to focus too much on that today. What we're going to start with is cannabidiol, or otherwise known as CBD. Nurturing, calm, alleviating anxiety, and improving sleep. CBD is renowned for its tranquil properties, holds promise as a therapeutic agent for individuals plagued by anxiety and hyperarousal in the aftermath of trauma. By modulating the endocannabinoid system and neurotransmitter pathways, CBD fosters a sense of calm and tranquility, providing relief from intrusive thoughts, heightened arousal, and overwhelming anxiety, all characteristics that we find with PTSD. Clinical trials have demonstrated CBD's efficacy in reducing anxiety levels and improving emotional regulation, offering hope for individuals navigating the challenges of PTSD, while also contributing to an overall well-being. Moreover, CBD has garnered attention for its potential to improve sleep quality by modulating the sleep-wake cycles and reducing insomnia symptoms. Restorative sleep is essential for emotional processing and cognitive functioning, making CBD a promising supplementary therapy for individuals with PTSD. Varieties that are high in CBD were never really around until, again, the mid-2000s, as we like to say. These varieties were mainly developed down in Spain, and while some of them were developed from the more commonly known varieties, landrace varieties such as from the Lebanon have been producing anywhere from 16 to 19% CBD for centuries. These varieties also produce another number of cannabinoids, but they can be known to produce predominantly CBD varieties, which can be growing outdoors and have a much harder cultivation response as well. They're much easier to look after and much easier to tend care of, rather than some varieties that are considerably growing indoors at all stages. The next cannabinoid is cannabidiol, otherwise known as CBG. It's cultivating resilience, enhancing sleep, and reducing fear. CBG, often referred to as the stem cell cannabinoid or the mother cannabinoid for another word, is considered a precursor to all major cannabinoids. like THC, CBD, CBC. During the early stages of the cannabis plant's growth, CBG is the first cannabinoid produced in the plant's trichomes. As the plant matures, enzymes break down CBG and convert it into other cannabinoids like CBD and CBC, as we mentioned. CBG exhibits a diverse pharmacological profile, including neuroprotectant and tranquil properties. Preclinical studies suggest that CBG may modulate neurobiological pathways implicated in PTSD pathogenesis, offering potential for symptom relief and restoration of cognitive function. Emerging evidence from clinical trial underscores CBG's efficacy in refining stress-related behaviors, bolstering emotional resistance, and enhancing overall quality of life for individuals navigating the aftermath of trauma. CBG shows promise for improving sleep quality and reducing fear responses, contributing to a comprehensive approach to PTSD treatment. By addressing disturbances and fear-based reactions, CBG offers holistic support for individuals on their path to recovery. One area that I really found beneficial for pure CBG varieties was in 2017, we had an extensive cultivation project around CBG alone. We cultivated it in large-scale outdoor and greenhouse scenarios to see exactly as to what we could get as the maximum amount of CBG in a variety, as well then as to extract that out to see it regards some small locally controlled trials. What we found was that the CBG varieties produced anywhere from 7 to about 17% CBG, with small traces amounts of CBD, nothing much else in there. When we then went forward and done a small trial, it was just based around 15 people over a 3-month period to see as to how effective a CBG variety may be in reducing anxiety. We found that of the 15 people, 5 people responded that no matter even when they tried to give themselves anxiety, they found it very difficult. They found it was very, very easy to be using CBG as anti-anxiety because it doesn't actually have any psychoactive effects. So its therapeutic benefit can be reached by a lot more people that some that might find have a sensitivity towards THC. The next one I'm pretty familiar with, and a variety and a cannabinoid I do actually really like, is cannabinoid. CBC is possibly effective for alleviating depression, fear, and improving sleep. CBC is a major non-psychotropic phytocannabinoid that exhibits endocannabinoid inactivation and activates a transient receptor potential ACHY1. While research on CBC is still evolving, initial findings suggest promising therapeutic potential in the realm of PTSD recovery. Preclinical investigations indicate the CBC may interfere with the constellation of traumatic memories, thereby reducing the frequency and intensity of intrusive recollections characteristic of PTSD. CBC has also shown promise to increase the effects of other cannabinoids or phytocannabinoids, hinting at a synergistic potential for more effective cannabinoid-based therapies. This is when we start to look at why we much prefer a full plethora of cannabinoids when we're looking at treating a condition. While there can be single cannabinoids alone, like THC and CBD, can be found to be effective, when we combine them with other cannabinoids, we can increase their effectiveness. And as CBC has been shown in certain trials to increase the uptake of other cannabinoids, it can be very effective for increasing the onset of a cannabinoid profile in consideration for what you're trying to treat. One other cannabinoid that I really enjoy, and I don't see too much of it around, is cannabidivarin. or otherwise known as CBDV. CBD modulates subcortical glutamate levels, preventing neurological behavior. CBDV, or cannabivarin, has the potential to modulate subcortical levels of glutamate, the brain's primary excitatory neurotransmitter, suggesting a role in influencing neurological activity. Glutamate, as the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, becomes a focal point in understanding as to how CBDV may contribute to neurobehavioral regulation. CBDV exhibits promise in preventing neurobehavioral alterations, as evidenced by its impact on the connectivity between the prefrontal and other brain regions when compared to a placebo. The dynamic effects of cannabinoids on the human brain's functional connectivity during resting state underscore the importance of considering the specific type of cannabinoid, highlighting the intricate relationship between cannabinoid components and brain function. Now, what CBDV isn't very common, we have found it in varieties that have high amounts of CBGV, as well as trace amounts of THCV. Usually we find a variety may have around the region of between 2 to 5% CBDV. Not a huge amount, but we don't believe so far that we need huge amounts of CBDV for it to be effective. And we may find that once it's used again with CBC and CBD, it may be much more effective than what it is just by being used on its own. Another cannabinoid really that is fairly common, and it's around a lot, but there just hasn't been a huge amount of study done on it, is cannabinol, otherwise known as CBN, which has mild sedative effects and potential sleep aid and relaxant. CBN, derived from THC oxidation, emerges as a less psychoactive compound, boasting mild sedative properties that have sparked interest in its potential as a sleep aid. Users note feelings of relaxation and drowsiness with CBN. Although its psychoactive effects are generally considered weaker than THC, there is still an awful lot more actual further exploration that needs to be looked into that. CBN's sedative effects are a focus of interest of those struggling with sleep issues, with ongoing research for a much more comprehensive understanding of its effectiveness and its mechanisms. Interacting with the endocannabinoid system, CBN, like other cannabinoids, engages with the receptors, both CB1 and CB2, influencing various psychological processes. Ongoing research in this area needs to be continued to show us the full potential that we should be seeing from CBN. Now, CBN, while a lot of people kind of go, oh, it has been around a long time, it is a relatively easy cannabinoid to be found, considering it is from the breakdown of THC, which can happen in one of two ways. It can happen with either heat or it can happen over time. Obviously, the most natural way for it to occur is over time through a curing of a variety, which can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months, depending on the variety, and as well as whether it could be one of these polyhybrids that we're very familiar with today, or if it was more like a unique landrace variety that not so much familiar with today, but is more familiar with what are medical varieties. Well, that kind of ends up on our cannabinoids for today. The next area that we're going to look into now is how cannabinoids are converted. Now, what we mean by here is that how THCA turns into THC and how CBDA turns into CBD and so on, so on. When we look at these varieties, when they are naturally crafted, so when we actually harvest a cannabinoid variety, we will look at it and we go, okay, right, when we do a certificate of analysis on it to tell us exactly what's in there. First of all, most labs are only able to discover at most maybe 11 cannabinoids, at most. Now, while some other labs around the world can discover more, like the United Nations, they have some laboratory work that's done on more cannabinoids. When we're looking at cannabinoid varieties today and looking at COAs, 11 cannabinoids is what's really there. And sorry, as I was saying, when we actually harvest a variety, when we look at it, we end up with a THCA, which could be along the region of anywhere maybe 18 to 20%. And then the THC would actually be along the lines of maybe anywhere from 0.5% to maybe 2%. Now, when we actually heat a cannabinoid variety, that's when we start to get rid of that carbon molecule. Different cannabinoids release that carbon molecule at different temperatures. And it really happens with most cannabinoids that are out there. Like CBN might be one that it has already occurred after a process, but everything else, as you can see, it is really a process that happens either with time or with heat breakdown. And again, that depends on as to how long we are going to be curing a variety for. What we have looked at, and when we were studying this in the Cannabis College going back about nearly 15 years ago, we would put a variety into storage. We would leave that there for up to a 6-month period. That variety will be retested at 1 month, at 3 months, at 4 months, and at 6 months. And what we would find is a variety which may have had 16 to 18% THC at the beginning, after a 3-month period, that THCA has converted, instead of being about 16 to 19%, might now be down to somewhere along the lines of 14 to 16%. We have found that 3 to 4% of the THCA has converted to THC, and about 0.5% of the CBDA has converted to CBD. Also, the same what we find is when we've got CBGA, which converts then into CBG, or other cannabinoids such as CBC, etc. Now, all of these occur in a different process, depending on the variety, and depending if it's a polyhybrid or if it's much more of a longer landrace variety, as to whether this process occurs quickly or takes longer over time. Additionally, like advanced extraction techniques in the industry can selectively convert cannabinoids to enhance specific therapeutic properties or create desired formulations. So we can quicken up this process if we choose to do so, or we can slow down the process either by using different temperatures, so on as to how we want to store varieties. We have found that we can keep varieties stable for up to 2 years when they're stored in the right conditions. To move on from there, our next area that we're going to look at is terpenes. Now, I find terpenes fascinating, so I do. It is exactly really, to me, what makes a specific cannabinoid variety a variety, as to whether we would say that is like my one of mine, like a lemon SK, or whether we would be calling it a Cali mist or a champagne haze. What really determines an awful lot of that, while yes, the cannabinoid profile is very important there, the terpene profile can be much, much different altogether, which gives us a unique profile for each variety. So when we start to look at the therapeutic values of terpenes for PTSD, we start to look at from the enchanting aroma of lavender to the unmistakable scent of pine. Terpenes play a crucial role in shaping the sensory experiences of the natural world around us. In this section, we will unravel the mysteries of terpenes, the types of terpenes, and isolated terpenes. We will explore their diverse functions within plants, the potential health benefits for humans, and their intriguing interactions with cannabis cultivars. So let's start with, what is a terpene? Okay, terpenes are natural compounds with strong aromas found in various plants, but they are often linked with cannabis due to the higher concentrations of these compounds. These aromatic substances give plants their distinct scents, like the smell of cannabinoid cultivars, such as pine, lavender, or even fresh orange peels. Many terpenes are bioactive, meaning that they affect the body and their impact depends on the concentration and exactly as to how they're used. Due to their vibrant smells, terpenes are the basis of many essential oils and the integral to all alternative therapies like aromatherapy, where inhaling scents may influence mood and stress levels. As regulations on cannabinoid therapies loosens, scientists are researching potential advantages in this that can be found. In plants, terpenes have various roles. Some attract pollinators, while others trigger reactions to repel predators. Some terpenes help plants recover from damage, and others act as part of the plant's immune system to fend off germs and pathogens. Terpenes and terpenoids are terms used interchangeably, but they are not exactly the same. Terpenes in the natural form in live plants, while terpenoids are what terpenes become as plants dry and cure, like in the production of cannabinoid cultivars. Manufacturers use isolated terpenes to create flavors and scents in everyday products like perfumes, body care items, and even foods. There is ongoing medical research on isolated terpenes, with many medical studies note that many terpenes have shown beneficial effects on the body, potentially serving as an alternative medicine or therapy. Now, there are many types of terpenes, so we're going to try and discuss them a little bit here now. Each type of terpene differs based on its chemical structure, aroma profile, and potential therapeutic effects. Monoterpenes consist of 2 isoprene units and are characterized by their volatile nature and strong aromas. They often have a fresh, citrusy, piney, or floral scent and are known for the potential therapeutic effects, including mood enhancement, relaxation, anti-inflammatory properties. Examples of these are myrcene, limonene, linalool, pinene, terpinolene, and alpha-bisabolol, and ocimene. Sequential terpenes contain 3 isoprene units, and they're larger and less volatile than monoterpenes. They often have a more earthy, woody, or spicy aroma, and may exhibit anti-inflammatory, analgesic, and antimicrobial properties. Examples include beta-carotene, humulene, carotene oxide, for example. Diterpenes consist of 4 isoprene units and less common in cultivar varieties, but still are present in trace amounts. They have a variety of aromas and may possess antioxidant, neuroprotectant, and anti-inflammatory effects. An example of one of these is phytol. Triterpenes are composed of 6 isoprene units and are found in the resinous trichomes of cannabinoid cultivars. They have a bitter or astringent taste and are known for their potential anti-inflammatory and analgesic properties. An example of this would be beta-sitosterol. Tetraterpenes contain 8 isoprene units and are responsible for the yellow, orange, and red pigments that we find in cannabinoid cultivars. They have antioxidant properties and may offer various health benefits when consumed. An example of one of these would be beta-carotene. Yeah, beta-carotene, that's one of my terpenes we find in some of our much longer flowering varieties. Essentially, those that kind of go into the 18 to 20 week region. Polyterpenes are long-chain polymers formed from numerous isoprene units. They are typically found in the resinous secretions of plants and may contribute to their adhesive or elastic properties. Examples of these are that we find is natural forms of latex or rubber. Isolated terpenes. Okay, let's embark on an insightful exploration into the distinctive characteristics and potential effects of individual terpenes on the human body. By delving into the unique properties of each terpene, we can unravel the intricate ways in which these compounds interact with our physiology, influencing various aspects of our well-being. Let's uncover the nuance and diverse effects that individual terpenes may have on the human body, paving the way for a deeper understanding of the complexities within the world of aromatic compounds. One of the most widely studied terpenes out there is beta-caryophyllene. It's been around a long time. It is one of the most common terpenes found in cannabinoid varieties today. It is also as to what sniffer dogs were originally trained on when they were looking for cannabinoid profiles. Beta-caryophyllene is a sequential terpene that binds with the CB2, TRPV1, and PPAR receptor sites. Depending on the concentration, its scent is spicy and peppery with a solid, warm, woody aroma with just a slight undertone of citrus, not too much. Beta-caryophyllene is commonly the predominant terpene in many cannabinoid cultivars, especially after decarboxylation. Beta-caryophyllene may be effective for gastroprotective, analgesic, anti-carcinogenic, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, anti-antileptic, and a neuroprotectant. It is probably one of the most widely studied terpenes that exists. I think we're up to about 80 different studies have been done on it now, which consist of human studies, lab studies, and animal studies. So we know a lot about this terpene in itself. The next terpene we're going to step into is geraniol. It's a monoterpenoid with a rose reminiscent scent. It is found naturally in cannabinoid cultivars, geraniums, rose oil, and lemons. Geraniol has an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. Preclinical evidence showed it may have neuroprotectant, anti-anxiety, and anti-diabetic effects. Well, the next terpene is one of my personal favorites, hence why we worked extensively with the lemon SK, which has a very large amount of limonene is found in that variety. Limonene is a relatively stable monoterpene and is the second most abundant terpene that we find in nature today, after pinene. Upon inhalation, limonene becomes rapidly bioavailable in the body in humans, as well as animals in trials. It is known to be effective for stress reduction, elevated mood, and appetite reduction. Limonene also has antioxidant properties and can help with the absorption of other cannabinoids and terpenes. What we have noticed is with the likes of the lemon SK, is because of the high amounts of limonene that exist in the variety, it can cause a very quick onset of the cannabinoids, as well as providing a quicker beneficial effect. Rather than having to wait 10-15 minutes for it to be effective, it can be quite effective within the first couple of minutes. Now, it is also needs to be remembered that these terpenes are only going to exhiberate themselves in their proper forms and in the highest amounts when everything is cultivated correctly. If we are in an environment where it is not cultivated to its full potential, if temperatures are too high, the environment is stressful, you are not going to get the amount of concentrations that you need for some of these terpenes to be effective. For instance, The lemon SK, when it produces its limonene, its highest limonene content is at 56 days into flower. That means that on 56 days, this variety needs to be cut down, so its highest amount of limonene is available for it to have its most effective medical benefit, as we would like to say. Now, if we leave that cultivar for 60 days, we lose a lot of that limonene that's present, and we end up with a much higher pinene content. Now, while that may be effective for some areas, it doesn't become as effective as it was if we'd harvested the variety at 56 days compared to 60 days. Now, when it comes to varieties being cultivated and being produced, when it comes to from a cultivator's point, they want to leave the variety for 60 days because it gives them a larger yield. But that may not necessarily be providing the most beneficial to our patient when we're looking to be what actually works and what doesn't work. It's good to be noted that, yeah, all of these terpenes are available, but it takes to make sure that they're cultivated correctly to make sure they come out in the right amounts so we can start to use them for the effective nature that we need them to be treating. One of my other favorite cannabinoids is linalool. It's a monoterpene that offers a floral lavender-like scent with a hint of spiciness. It displays a great variety of potential health effects because it can act on many receptors and biochemical pathways. Like in our first episode, lots of studies have been done on linalool, and it is found it could be effective as for treating anxiety, a neuroprotectant, antidepressant, anti-stress, anti-hypertension, analgesic, and anti-convulsant properties. We will be discussing linalool more in chapter 3 when we start to focus more on full cannabinoid profiles that are very effective for treating PTSD. Another terpene that is another terpene that is very abundant in cannabinoid varieties today is myrcene. Now, personally, myrcene doesn't have the effects that I would like it to have. We have found that in too high of a dose, it can be, how should we put it, counter-effective. When in smaller doses, we have found it to be very effective. So we have definitely found this is one of more of those terpenes where it needs to be working with the individual to find as to where the effective level with it is. So myrcene is a monoterpene that in diluted forms tastes like mangoes. Myrcene also makes other cannabinoids like THC more bially available by increasing the saturation level and speed at the CBD1 receptor and thus boosting THC's properties. Higher concentrations of beta-myrcene in cannabinoid cultivars tend to lead to feelings of heavy, deep relaxation and can also help induce a heavy and deep sleep. Other potential properties are for anti-anxiety, analgesic, and anti-inflammatory effects. Another terpene that is found in a lot of varieties that I work with is ocimene. Ocimene is a monoterpene with a perfume-like floral scent. It is used as a flavoring agent and additive. Natural sources of ocimene include tarragon, basil, mint, and parsley. Ocimene is thought to possess anticonvulsant, antifungal, antibacterial, anti-tumor, and anti-hypertension properties. It is one of my preferred terpenes for regards its smell. I find it very relaxing just in the smell of it in it by itself. The next kind of terpene that we're looking at is phytol. Phytol is a diterpene richly represented in nature as part of the larger molecule chlorophyll, which gives leaves their green color and is essential in photosynthesis. Natural sources include cannabinoid cultivars and green tea. Phytol may have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, anticonvulsant, antimicrobial, antiparasitic, anti-anxiety, sedating, and anti-obesity effects. A lot more study needs to be done into this terpene, as it is widely available in a lot of varieties. And as we know, green tea has always had a number of beneficial effects on humans. So the higher concentrated form of phytol in these cannabinoid varieties can be quite effective. Terpeneol has a lilac, citrus, or apple blossom to lime odor. It is used extensively in the perfume, cosmetics, and flavor additive industries. It is a minor constituent of many plants' essential oils. It has strong sedation effect and works as a muscle relaxant. Now, when we just take a look at just these terpenes alone, we can see that each of them alone has areas that can be effective for when we're treating PTSD. Now, also, when you combine these with the cannabinoids, we start to look at is what exactly is the entourage effect. Now, what exactly is the entourage effect? We have known since like the 80s, the 90s, that terpenes most certainly give us the effect that we have when we're dealing with different cannabinoid varieties. Now, Dr. Ethan Russo, he led a groundbreaking scientific study in 2011 to prove all of this. We've been saying it for years. Well, we need to put the science behind what we do. That's why we're here today. This concept likens the entourage effect to essentially teamwork in cannabinoid therapy, suggesting that when compounds like THC, CBD, terpenes, flavonoids, when we mix all of these together, we get the entourage effect, which is much more effective than each of them all by themselves. While many studies have been done on just a single cannabinoid or a single terpene or a single flavonoid, when we start to combine them together is really the research that intrigued me. This is what I kind of found fascinating about it, to be honest. When we're looking at as to how these are effective, we need to be starting with, okay, how exactly was this variety first cultivated? So ensuring that a variety is cultivated, number one, that has, as we like to say, we want to give these plants the best opportunity that they have. And for the full plethora of cannabinoids and terpenes to appear, from all of our studies that we have done, we have found that living soil and organic soil preparations give us the widest amounts of cannabinoids and widest amount of terpenes available. And as well as something that it's not always about as to how much of something is in there, it's also as what has actually caused that to be made up. So when we have varieties that have a full plethora of nutrients available in the soil, well, the plant then can become a little bit more like us, can't it? It can wake up on a Tuesday, per se, and decide that it wants a little bit more potassium or it wants a little bit more nitrogen on a certain day. It can uptake those, and this is what can then lead us to having a much higher cannabinoid level and as well as a much higher terpenoid level. these are what really makes cannabinoid varieties actually effective, is the full profile that's in there. What we find with varieties that start to have maybe just THC and CBD in there, they're not as effective as varieties which have THC, CBD, CBG, CBC, and CBN, as well as having a plethora of maybe 5 or 6 different terpenes in there, starting with the major ones and then continuing on to some which might only be around in minute or trace amounts, but can still have a strong effect when they're mixed with other cannabinoids, and when those other cannabinoids can cause them to be absorbed much more effectively. So as we move on then to when we're talking about, okay, different varieties that expand, different varieties that are effective, different varieties that can be useful for treating PTSD and the rest of it, we have to look at varieties that contain everything, not just single cannabinoids, which are effective by themselves, but they need to contain everything to find them much more effective over longer periods of time. This is something that we'll be looking an awful lot more into when we look into episode 3, which will be talking about these profiles in a much more concentrated form. So I think that's it from me at the moment. I think we will have a look at regards as to what questions we have available and see what we're going to answer today. So I'll hand you back over to Deb.
Thanks, Robert. That was just brilliant. I'll just start my video again so I'm not actually... I think you might have my video switched off at your end there. Perfect. Thanks, Robert. That was terrific. As always, really informative. We've got quite a few questions sitting in the chat here, so I'll just go back up to the top there. So we've got Matthew in the background there. He's asked, what role does curing have on the terpene profile? Remember again that this information that we discuss here is just information. If you want particular medical advice, please contact your practitioner direct or jump on the TGA website. So what role does curing have on the terpene profile, Robert?
Actually, you know what? One of the best ways I can explain this is in Afghanistan, when varieties were being produced, they would be looking at being cured away for anywhere up to 3 to 6 months, which can then cause other terpenes to actually appear that were not there when the plant was actually harvested. So as these varieties cure and as compounds break down, we can find like phytol, for instance, that appears as chlorophyll actually breaks down. So some of these terpenes don't actually become available or cannot actually be detected until a cure process has occurred.
Thank you. Pretty clear explanation there. So I hope that satisfies that question, Matthew. Kate's actually asked here, which is, you know, there's a pretty straightforward answer to that, but I'll let you answer that, Robert. If the varieties are just so useful for multiple treatments, then why are psychiatrists still using antidepressant medications?
Right. Deb, do you want to answer that one?
Look, honestly, I was in a very, very superseded education session on the weekend, and we've got psychiatrists there that, you know, will speak about the benefits of the terpene profiles, the cannabinoids themselves, and that whole ECS. Remember, it's not just about cannabis, but when it comes to stigma, propaganda, I guess we've got to remember that our doctors, our police officers, our politicians have been taught for a very long time that it causes psychosis and there's issues with it. So there's a lot of psychiatrists out there that are still developing knowledge or still quite anti to knowledge, and they just don't want to know. So at the end of the day, those medicines are first line, and that's where we need to go. We do say now cannabis isn't last line, or cannabinoid medicine isn't last line, it's second line, I'd say now. But those medications have what's been developed over many, many years and been proven through clinically researched evidence that they're safe and effective, and that's what our TGA needs, and that's what our psychiatrists like to see. a lot of practitioners walk in that line and they don't quite see out of that box. So I hope that answers that question. So the next one is actually from Matthew again. How important is plant nutrition when focusing on maximising the terpene profile? For example, he says if all strains in a greenhouse receive the same nutrition throughout the flowering cycle, would that have a negative or a positive effect?
Okay, when it comes to, as we say, plant nutrition, each variety is completely different. So it is. For instance, if we are looking at as to what a champagne haze, what we're using to cultivate that, would be very different to what I would be using to cultivate a lemon SK. Now, while the nutrient levels could be different, it also, as well as if you find that these varieties could be overfed, they can be burnt, as a term we use, which then can halt the production of cannabinoids as well as terpenes. Now, usually we find is that while these varieties as well need to flower for a certain period of time before those full flora of cannabinoids and terpenes present themselves as well. So, for instance, the champagne haze is usually a 12-week variety. If we chop that variety down in 9 weeks, it's not going to have the full flora of cannabinoids or terpenes in it that it would have if it was given its full length of time and fed its full abundance of nutrients. If we give these varieties too little nutrients or too much nutrients, we don't get to bring out their full potential, which makes it very important for when you have cultivators that they have people that completely understand what the plant is and that they're actually able to work with a variety to tease out all of those cannabinoids and those terpenes that are there to make it to be the best example of what it can be.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we've got one here. What role? Oh, we've just done that one. I'm sorry. My apologies there. Okay, if the scrolling down my list is it now. What methods have been used in the research for absorption in or on the body, cream or skin, or oil under the tongue, or mist spray? What an awesome question. Not sure where that's from. And do any of those cannabinoids and terpenes affect hormone levels? So there's two actually in that. What methods have been used? We've done. Do any of the cannabinoids and terpenes affect hormone levels?
Look, it all depends on an individual as to how cannabinoids and terpenes affect me, and as to how cannabinoids and terpenes affect you are very different. Like, for instance, Amanda, who put together all of our slideshow, thank you very much, Amanda. Amanda is allergic to myrcene. Now, myrcene is very common in most cannabinoid varieties. So it can have an effect on her in a number of different ways. And it's the exact same way as with the cannabinoids as well. So depending on the individual, depending on their history, and as well as their physical and psychological makeup, that these cannabinoids and terpenes can have different effects on the body.
And remember, we've all got feet, we don't wear the same shoes. So what it might say in writing that myrcene does for one may not necessarily do for others, which is an exact explanation of cannabinoid medicine. It's very individual. We don't have the same kind of, individual makeup. So could the cannabinoids and terpenes change depending on what medium is used to grow that particular plant?
Oh, yes, they can, of course. So back in Holland, so we were working with many of the recognized and known nutrient companies that are around today. We would work with them extensively to see as to what formulations would cause the plant to produce higher amounts of THC, or might cause the plants to produce higher amounts of CBD, or could cause them to produce higher amounts of CBG, as well as the terpenes there as well. So depending on the nutrient that you're feeding, the nutrient schedule that you're feeding, it can have various different approaches as to how a profile may represent itself. And that is really dependent on what the cultivator is looking for and what they're trying to achieve at the time. If it's a scenario where we might be just chasing the highest cannabinoid content, which isn't necessarily the most beneficial medically, a certain feeding schedule is kind of put into place. But that's why we look at when we actually want to have a full cannabinoid and terpene profile. That's why, again, we look at more living soils and more organic soil formulations that are much more effective for giving an overall profile rather than focusing on just one or two cannabinoids or one or two terpenes.
Perfect. Beautiful answer. So we are close to wrapping up. So if there's no more questions that we can see there, I think it's been a really informative night. Do not forget, people, this is just so please do remember that to reach out to the proper bodies, TGA or admin, your practitioners there. So just let me conclude by urging you all to keep up with those current events out there, participate in those conversations. Remember, it's Medicinal Cannabis Awareness Week. Share that, promote the responsible use, and obviously that access for veterans to the endocannabinoid therapy is where we're at in our journey. We hope that you found this webinar very informative. The webinar in both video form as well as all the resources used and mentioned today by Robert, they'll be on Robert's website, YouTube channel, and also the No More Zombie Veterans. I think if you missed last one, it's available as well, Robert. Correct me if I'm wrong. The first episode
Yes, we are
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting all of that together.
Yeah, so just again, don't forget it's McCall Week, so do reach out, reach one, teach one, I always say, and we really do appreciate you coming along tonight on this journey. It's really impossible to get that out unless we have all of you guys in the background working. So just next month, join us for episode 3. It's actually going to be genetics in clinical trials and an introduction to the MA genetics and the in-depth discussion around that on their clinical trials. And it was specifically targeted at PTSD treatments, which is where we're at with veterans. There's a great, source of information and access out there if they can get it for chronic pain, but a lot of them suffer from that PTSD and all of those things associated with that. So keep that in mind. Spending time with us this evening, we really do appreciate it. And thanks again to you, Robert. And of course, No More Zombie Veterans. Information discussed.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and yeah, thank you, Deb, for hosting tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Amanda, for putting together the slideshow. There's an awful lot of work that goes into it behind the scenes. Thank you to Jackie for hosting again tonight, as always, and as of course, keep up the pressure, everybody. This is all about to help out our veterans, which are the ones to make sure that we get to sleep safely at night. So look, contact your politicians, contact who you need to, and let's get these people the support that they actually need. That's all we're actually here for. We just want to see people that we're able to look after us. So again, the most important thing you can give everyone is your time. So thank you everyone for your time, and hope you can join us next month.
Bless everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.